Okay, so I am in a little bit of a rush, but I have time for one more video before I head to Super Booth. The KORG NTS-1 is this tiny semi-DIY synthesizer and effects processor. It's beloved by many, including myself, in part because it was also upgradable with new custom effects and oscillators. So when KORG reached out and wanted to send me the new NTS-2, I was excited. What would it be like? What kind of upgrades had they done to it? Turns out there was no real upgrades at all. The KORG NTS-2 was not the synth upgrade you or I expected. In fact, it's something completely different and something that I think you will find most interesting. Let's start by unboxing and assembling. So the KORG NewTek NTS-2 comes in this box here, and inside the box, it's a nice little kit. You get the new patch and tweak with KORG, and you get the NTS-2, which is semi-DIY. I think most of you will be able to put it together. I'm really bad with DIY stuff, so if I can manage, you can. So far so good. When I'm putting it together, something like this, my mind goes like, yeah, you're an engineer now, Bo. While I'm putting this on, I'm just gonna tell you about today's sponsor, DistroKid. If you are in the market for a service that lets you upload music to Spotify and iTunes, I can definitely recommend DistroKid. I've been with them for many years, and they're a simple, easy to use service. They're also affordable at $20 a year, and for $20 a year, you can upload unlimited amounts of music, which is nice. So check out DistroKid, linked in the description. Now we're gonna see if this works. Moment of truth. Does it power up? Let's see here. Oh, yes, it powers up. Oh, nice. Look at that screen. That looks really good. Now let me be transparent. This is my absolute first experience with a dedicated oscilloscope or spectrum analyzer for synthesizers, so I can't tell you how good it is. I can just give you some of my initial impressions. The NTS-2 specs are, we have 2 stereo in channels, 2 stereo through or out channels, and 2 separate outputs. We have an oscilloscope, a tuner, it can be a spectrum analyzer. You can even use it as a synthesizer or LFO, and it also comes with a book. So first up we have the scope. And here we see a representation of the waveform, and we can also change how much of it we see. So when we go from the square wave here and we add in more waveforms, we get a clear picture of what's actually happening to the sound. We can also select the time that we're looking at. So here's 100 milliseconds. We can get even more granular. There's also different display modes, so we can just have it overlaid. We can separate the inputs, so either show 2 of them at the same time. For example, if we have 2 stereo, and we can show all 4 of them. Because if we take a look here at the I/O, the first 2 inputs here are actually TRS inputs. So we can have 4 mono inputs going in here, and we can actually take 2 stereo out here through the through outputs, and then we have 2 mono outputs that are used for the waveform generators, basically the built-in oscillators and LFOs. So we can take them out. And these outputs can also be either audio or CV, so you could use this to modulate something like the microbrute, for example. So that was the scope. We also have a tuner with a scope. We can turn the scope on and off. We can also have different display modes, so we can see it more like a meter. And the whole menu system is very snappy, it's very on point. And with the complementary book that you get with the unit, you also have a detailed description of all the functions. Here you can also see that to use the 2 inputs for 4 mono inputs, you need a little splitter like this from TRS to TS. And then we have the FFT mode, which you can see the entire waveform across the frequency spectrum. Overall, for a first time using an oscilloscope, this is quite intriguing, quite fun. We then also have the wave generator, which can generate LFOs, envelope, and just regular oscillator sounds, and it's outputted here through outputs 1 and 2, and we can listen to it. We can change the pitch here of the oscillator, waveform type, and shape. It can also be set to an LFO, noise, pulse, and envelope. You can also use it to generate an LFO. You can just take a normal CV patch cable and use it to control whatever parameters you want on your Eurorack, your semi-modular synth. So it's really like a Swiss Army knife of functions that you can use with your hardware synth setup. What's also really neat is that you do have an attenuator for the LFOs or for the CV signals going out. The pulse signal, for example, could be used as a clock for an external synth or some kind of Eurorack. We also have an envelope where you can change the waveform quite a bit. You also have USB, which I think is mainly used for power. I could be wrong, haven't had the time to test it, but I think it's for power. You can also battery power it here. So overall, I'm very happy about it. Now, personally, I have always been a little bit anti using oscilloscopes when learning about sound design, but I have to admit, it's very interesting seeing what happens to the sound when you change things. The reason I've been skeptical is that I feel it leans more into the engineering side of things than the musical side of things. The representation on the screen has very little to do with the feelings that sound evokes. However, as a learning tool, having graphical representation of what is going on can be very helpful in understanding why something sounds the way it sounds. For learning what a function like an LFO actually does, or say pitch cross modulation FM actually does, it could be an invaluable tool. So I have to admit that even though I haven't been using one, it has its role in pretty much any synth lover's setup, and I'm glad that KORG is making this affordable, tiny one that I think will be very useful to many of you. Now with this video done, I'm heading off to Superboot 22 and I hope to see you all there. I'll be doing a meetup on the 14th of May at 1 p.m. by the Circus tent, and I hope to see you there. And also a big thank you to Ike Multimedia for sponsoring my Superboot trip. Be sure to check out my YouTube short about their new audio interface, the iRig Pro Quattro. It's linked in the description. And as always, have a great day, and I hope to see you in future videos.